In July this year, Debbie Jackson moved from one city hall, the GLA's, where she was head of built environment, to another, Westminster City Hall, to take over as Director of Growth, Planning and Housing. She previously worked at Westminster when she joined as a fast-track graduate back in 1997. So Debbie, can you just start by telling me about what you see as your key achievements when you were still at the GLA?
So yeah, my time at the GLA. So I worked at the LDA first and then the GLA for nearly 11 years and did a few things, particularly towards the end of my time when I took on interim roles in the wider department. But I think my main role and what I was perhaps most known for there was the setting up of the regeneration team, which then grew up to be regeneration and economic development team. And I guess two main things I'd talk about in terms of our work as a team. Firstly, the programs that we developed and delivered over time, a mind-boggling collection of acronyms, which even we struggle to remember. But we began with the Outer London Fund, which was a response to the recession, the last recession. And then in the middle, we had the Mayor's Regeneration Fund, which was a response to the riots. And then more recently, and now, is the Good Growth Fund. And which is really a focus on how communities can benefit from growth and share in the benefits. But I think, and so they're great, and I feel really proud as I move around the city. There's so many projects that that I can say, oh yeah, we were involved in that and we did that. But I think what I'm particularly proud of with that team is that we very much set ourselves not just to set ourselves up, not just to churn money out the door. So we very much set ourselves up, and I hope we're seen and are still seen as a team to support and help. And whether it was building networks so that people were able to share expertise, whether it was developing the framework so that people could access the right support and consultancy and talent, or whether it was about the guidance that we issued as well. I feel like we really set ourselves up to think about what our partners needed and how we could position ourselves to do that. So we're really proud of the programmes. The other one, and I'm not just playing to my audience with you as one of our Mayor's Design advocates, is the Good Growth by Design programme. So when I became responsible for the team, I inherited the Mayor's Design Advisory Group, which you'll remember, Peter. And if I can say this, this was a very old-fashioned approach to how we do things. It was tethered around meetings. And it didn't feel like that's how we should be doing things. And it felt like it was failing to draw on the extraordinary talent we have in London. So we wanted to develop something more responsive that drew upon the wide and diverse range of talent in London to support our wide and diverse work programme. And with it all being about good growth. So we set up Good Growth by Design with its 6 pillars and 50 Mayor's Design advocates, you being one of them. A bit counterintuitive for the public sector, takes us outside our comfort zone. We find familiarity and comfort in governance and boards and things like that. But basically what we wanted to do was have this community of talent that gathered and dispersed around particular pieces of work. And it's still going now. And I think you've just been telling me you've been at a launch event this morning. So it goes from strength to strength. But the kind of things that programme has delivered and developed is guidance and programmes around housing design guidance, the Public London Charter, really important work around supporting diversity in the sector. And of course, this programme incubated public practice, which goes on from strength to strength and is now sort of separate from City Hall, but very much incubated from within the GLA. So I think, really proud with how we took what was a very traditional way of doing things and turned it into something that felt much more relevant and much more flexible and drew upon that more diverse pool of talent. So hopefully you share my view that that's a success, Peter, from the inside.
Yeah, very good. A great record, Debbie. But taking over as Director of Growth at Westminster in the middle of the pandemic, when activity in the West End particularly has plummeted, that might be seen as a bit of a poisoned chalice. Now, the city plan, which goes from now to 2040, looks to creating 63,000 new jobs. I mean, is that sort of aspiration still realistic, do you think? And can you tell me about the council's sort of key strategies for dealing with the impact of the pandemic?
Yeah, sure. So this job was always going to be a baptism of fire, big borough, big job. But I don't see it. I don't like those words, poison chalice. I'm gonna take the cup half full approach. That it's a really once in a lifetime career opportunity to be working for Westminster as it journeys through and out of the pandemic. Sticking with that optimism, I don't know about you, but I find with news of the vaccine, which I still find quite difficult to believe, but it seems to be real, the shift in mood is completely palpable. I mean, just look what it's done to the stock markets. So, and I think, as say at the beginning of any webinar, that no one knows where this is going to take us. So we're all guessing, but it's right that we're talking about it, and we are trying to think about what the scenarios could be. But my personal view is I do feel optimistic in my role in Westminster in terms of our ability to deliver on those jobs and continue to be the important sort of economic powerhouse that it has been. Just before I talk a bit more about strategies, I just want to acknowledge the sort of immediate work that the borough has done to respond to the pandemic. So I genuinely think it's been quite extraordinary, and a huge amount of learning has gone on. And so I've been there for nearly 4 months, and whether it's issuing grants to thousands of businesses in a matter of days, whether it's bringing all the ref sleepers in, whether it's supporting an outside dining revolution or making all of the street space for the active travel in the borough, to say that the council has pivoted is an understatement. So, and I think that there's a huge amount of learning and a real desire to bottle some of that flexibility and nimbleness. But I think your question is about some of the longer term strategies. So I'm going to dwell a bit on the West End for a moment, if I can. There's been much debate out there in terms of the role and relevance of city centres in a post-COVID world. I don't really buy the sort of, exodus from the cities argument. I think we've all made promises to tether ourselves less to the rat race, but I think the agglomeration benefits and the productivity benefits of cities remain because of the mixed offer that we bring. And I think our employees will demand quality in terms of the spaces they work in and the places that they work in. And I think cities bring those benefits in spades. And also, lots of people are very motivated about climate emergency anyway, and I think the pandemic has only made that more important to people. But let's not forget that cities are the most sustainable things we have in terms of the efficiency of the infrastructure and the shared benefits of infrastructure for many people. I think there's a real ongoing role for cities. So I do feel optimistic that we will continue to be an economic powerhouse. But things are going to change. I don't believe in the exodus, but I do believe it's going to change. I think the nature of the workplace is going to change. It's going to take some time to get the tourists back, although frankly, I'm quite tempted to book a flight tomorrow, and I think there's going to be quite a bounce when over the course of the next 12 months. But I think it will all be about quality, it will be about flexibility. We have those targets in the London plan, but we're very motivated to monitor and track and of course review the effectiveness of our policies as well. So we do believe it's still a realistic target, but I think for us it's all about keeping an eye on how the city evolves and over a period of time. So yeah, I remain optimistic, but I'm not being, and there's a word that now completely escapes me, complacent.
A key part of the plan is a healthier and greener city, and together with the Crown Estate, you recently announced changes to Regent Street with trees and cycleways, a very green vision, really. So when are we going to see such improvements to Oxford Street, which must be under huge threat really at the moment because of the pandemic, and also of course the North Bank, which is a major project in the city plan as well?
Absolutely, and again, when I applied for this job, which I think I started the application process pre-pandemic, I already knew that the Oxford Street district was the #1 priority coming into this role, and of course, as you said, it's in sharp relief at the moment, and The plans for Regent Street are great, and I'm told they're on site, and it's all happening at the moment. I need to get down there and have a look. But we've acknowledged for some time that we need to give some attention to Oxford Street, and it's for that reason that the council established the budget, £150 million. That money is protected. We've still got every intention of bringing forward proposals for the Oxford Street district. And the district bit is important because, of course, Oxford Street does not exist in isolation. It has relationships to all of those neighbourhoods around it, and we very much see it as being part of an ecosystem. So we remain committed to plans for the Oxford Street district. We are currently revisiting our plans to make sure that we've still got the right ideas. We've just had a whole chat about the world changing, active travel, smart cities. We need to make sure that these are plans for the future, not plans built on the trends of yesterday. So very motivated to have a think about how we can in a way, use the district as a shop window for those future trends. So what is the future of retail? What is the role of the high street? Active mobility, living and working in the city. Like, there's a real opportunity for us to be a demonstrator and forward thinking here, so that the district and the wider West End is known world round for sort of forward thinking and innovation. We just appointed a new programme director for the Oxford Street District, who is motoring, and we're planning to refresh our plans and bring them forward within the coming months. So very committed to the Oxford Street District as a programme. And I have to say, if there's another really positive effect of the pandemic, we've always had great partnerships in the West End, but the coming together of those partnerships over COVID has given us such a strong foundation to work together, and such a will and belief to do things that formerly may not have seemed possible. So there's a real strength in partnership and positivity around the West End and the Oxford Street District at the moment. On some of our other projects, our place shaping projects, you've spoken about North Bank, and this is one of our key projects identified in the city plan, as you've said. The team that works on this has been working on the hospitality measures, so has been slightly COVID, and is now coming back to support those measures on an ongoing basis, but also return to some of the business as usual. So North Bank, again, brilliant partnership project, in particular working with the BID, and we have been developing our place strategy for the North Plan over the course of the last year or so, closely linked into the Strand Aldwych project, which is still on track as well to transform Strand Aldwych, which we know is a bit of our city that we're very motivated to transform. So still very much a priority for us, and we're working through those partnerships to deliver them, but very much drawing on the priorities in the City for All plan, which is the council's strategic document, which is around cleaner and greener, vibrant communities and smart city. So yeah, still business as usual.
But all of this, of course, has to be seen in the context of the changes to the planning system proposed by the government, and some which have happened already. So at a detailed scale, will you be able to protect small businesses in places like Soho, as you suggest in the city plan, in the light of changes to use class orders and permitted development? And then in the macro scale, the three categories of development set out in the future of planning, do they suit the complexity of an inner city borough like Westminster?
Lots of questions in there, and so let's talk about the stuff that's in already at the moment, because in some ways that's easier to discuss in some ways. I mean, it's true that the use class order changes remove a control, if we want to put it that way, that the council had before, but the council was very motivated already to try and support that flexibility. So it's pushing in the same direction as we wanted to go anyway. I think we'll have to wait and see what happens here. Westminster is fortunate and quite unique in that a lot of its commercial property is owned through a relatively small number of commercial landlords who we have very good partnerships with. So there's a sort of slightly different context in Westminster to other places. I think for me, it's a question of vibrant, not vibrant, active frontages. And within the use class, you could shift from active to non-active frontages. And I think that's when it starts to fracture high streets and town centres. I think we'll have to see how it plays out in the sort of the intense areas of the city centre. But I do feel like we've got a certain degree of additional protection, if we want to put it that way, through the land ownerships that we have in central London. In terms of the big changes, I mean, if we were in the days where things were all still printed out, I'd love to know how many rooms were filled by responses to that consultation, because there was so much in there, and so fundamental. And our response, as with many others, asked questions and made the point that we need to understand the detail of this in order for us to fully appreciate what it would mean for us. We're supportive of reform. The planning system should always be held up to scrutiny to think about whether it's the best way to do things. I think there is a broader conversation to have. If the challenge we're trying to address here is house building, then the planning system is just one part of that. And we all know the stats about the number of consented schemes that aren't built out. So clearly there are other factors at play here, and an ongoing consideration of some of those other factors at play is something that we very much advocate as well. I think that the other point that we've made in our response as well is in terms of the involvement of communities, and we feel like the involvement of local communities in the consideration of changes to their area is a really positive thing, and we just want to be reassured that that can continue to be the case as well. So I think in your question you've picked up on the sort of the three categories, I'm not going to protect, renew, grow, if I got that right. Clearly in Westminster, with a very heritage-led location, loads of conservation areas, you could make the assumption that the protect is equal to the conservation areas. I think we've asked whether that is absolutely confirmed or whether that remains to be seen. And so I think you've asked the question about whether that sort of three categorisation works in a sort of dense city. And I think we are interested in how it works, in particular in boundaries, when you go from protect to grow, for example, or renew. Can't remember which is most likely. Stacks of unanswered questions about this, but I think the scale of the changes mean that it can only evolve. I'll be really interested to see what government does next, because I imagine they're doing an awful lot of reading at the moment.
I'm sure they are. So Debbie Jackson, thank you very much indeed for your comments, and good luck with Westminster. The centre of the city is so important to protect, I think, as we come out of COVID-19. So good luck with that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. Good to see you. Take care.